Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of DC's Legends of Tomorrow. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're picking up with the Legends time traveling. It seems like they landed in 1943. But obviously, we get introduced to our guest, Bishop, and he's like, no, I'm not the bad guy. Well, in actuality, I actually am. He's like, well, then who blew up the Wave Rider? That was me. And who's sending the robots after us? Also me. Sounds like you're real guy. He's like, no, but I thought you guys kidnapped me, but then I found out that, no, you guys are the good guys, and I'm the bad guy. So he's trying to make things right, but, they're like sending him to the top floor, put him in John's room. And I love that Gwen's like, who's John? And I think it was Ava that was like, don't worry about it. I'm like, but the fact is that they luckily landed near an airplane manufacturer, so they can make the pieces they need necessary to fix the time machine. So all the ladies get hired on the floor because it's a mainly lady workforce, while everyone's, the men are off to war, the women are back home. Rosie Riveter being the inspiration for like the symbol of the movement of just everything happening back home. So but obviously even with that, some level of progress in that regard. It's like, well, yeah, like Astra and Spooner get stuck in the janitorial side of things. Gideon's an secretary, and Ava and Sarah on the manufacturing floor. Poor Ava had to Sarah's like, oh, just cover for me. She's like, okay. And then someone else is like, oh, cover for me. She's like, sure. And she's just trying to do everything and literally having to stuff it in her mouth because she was like just sweeping everything. I'm like, is that going to really help this situation? And then having to stuff them all in her mouth, and just because the guy was like, hey, are you stealing? And she's like, nope. And it's like, okay. Obviously, Spooner was able to take the necessary pieces that they were able to kind of steal away, but she could make the piece because they need like 18 replacement pieces, and she was able to make one, but it's going to take a while to make 17, especially at the pace they're going. Especially, once again, they have to like keep a low cover. They're supposed to stay invisible because the less ripples they cause in timelines, the less likely evil Gideon, which I love. Gideon's like, how about not evil Gideon, but misunderstood Gideon that's just trying to protect the timeline. And it's like, evil Gideon it is. But obviously for Astra, like what infuriates her about the circumstances are like, right, women of color are being treated the way they are. But the head honcho, who's kind of like, I don't know if we ever even got her name in the episode, but the head honcho lady that Astra and Spooner interact with the most, she's the one kind of telling her, like, right, you need to get rid of that city attitude, and, like, we look like professionals here. Like, yes, it's not the ideal situation, but it is work. This is progress in its own right. And so it's like, right, do you see that workout order? Like, we go in there and we work on stuff, whatever we want to. And it's like, just don't do anything crazy or anything stupid. Well, Astra tried to, like, shortcut a lot of this by creating a work order that would basically make it so that they could make everything into place more efficient. So, like, music, because she actually opened up a complaint box later on. So, like, well, initially she gets caught by Mr. Staples, which that actor, I know him best from, like, Monk, but I'm like, I feel like there was something more recent I'd seen him in. I know he's in some episodes of Travelers on Netflix, but I feel like there's something even more recent I saw him in. I just can't remember. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head. But, yeah. He caught her in his office and was going to fire her. And I guess Astra's magic is evolving because, like, she didn't even do a spell. Her powers are manifesting it just in the form of her emotions. And I guess she was, like, freaked out, worried, and just kind of angry all at once. And then she, like, froze him in time. She didn't actually cast a spell. It's just like her powers are manifesting, and I think her powers are as a magician and just are just like manifesting in a different manner now. That there might be a deeper, more powerful magic in her that she hasn't accessed until now. Because obviously, like, there's layers to it that we've seen. I mean, obviously she ended up making machine Gideon into Gideon, which is the interesting thing because even Bishop's like, wait, you're human. Yes. She's like, he's like, how human are you? She's like 100%. And she's like, how much machine are you? And she's like 100%, which she's like, I know mathematically doesn't make sense, but it's like, yeah, because she is human, but she has all her knowledge that she had as a machine of Gideon. So I'm curious, is that going to affect her in the long term? Because that might be too much for a normal human brain to handle. I mean, to be fair, like, she was short-circuiting in the beginning, but now I think she's found an equilibrium between both sides of herself. But I'm still curious whether or not that's going to be, like, too much for her. It might be, like, overloading her brain too much. I mean, maybe that was the issue before. Now that short-circuiting, like, kind of, like, fixed that, potentially, when she kind of got her reset, or rather reboot. So maybe that's where that is, and maybe it won't be an issue, but I just feel like that would be too much for any human brain to handle, potentially. But, I mean, the human brain itself is a computer. That's what computers are, based on. So, like, it makes sense that, like, her computerness would be able to operate in the brain, because the brain is just a computer, So, I'm curious to see if that ends up it being any ramifications for that, or am I just potentially overthinking things, or are we kind of past that point right now? We'll see. But, once again, Astra was trying to run things, like, because they're making things more efficient. She tried to make sandwiches, get food, music, give people the breaks they need so that they can keep the operation going, and this also allowed for them to make the parts they need. But granted, Astra went a step further and made it, God, what's the word they used in the episode? Basically making it so everybody, white and colored, could work together, integrated. But the workforce didn't appreciate that. And that's a complicated thing about history. It's like, there are women who don't have, like, you have some rights, but you don't have a lot of rights. But even the women left because it's like, getting colors to work with us, it's like, yeah, like, it's a twofold battle of, like, yeah, women's rights, but then, because then it's like, colored people's rights, so it's still that thing of, like, yeah, it's like, white is still white, male or female, and the time period, so it's like, yeah, of course they're not. I don't know why, like, in my head, I was like, I thought that's kind of sucky, they would not want to, it's like, right, they might all be women, but it's still the thing of, yeah, we might be women, but we're white, you're colored, you're still less than us. Once again, even though the complicated thing is, especially in that time, women are seen as, so that's kind of like the right, once again, the ugly part of history of, like, how it's kind of like we're all kind of down in the muck of, we're all kind of treated as less than, but being colored is even less than being a woman in the time, so it's like, just like, man, the harsh realities of things. Like, it's like, once again, you just have your perspective. Like I said, I have my perspective. Like, they're all women. Of course they're going to work together because, it's just like men are in control and they're kind of treated. But once again, it's like, right. The messed up aspect of it, there is a hierarchy that you have to kind of realize, at least in the view, in that lens. And sadly, that still, I think, to some effect, that still even exists today. That trickle-downness of, like, being how you're viewed in society still exists in some aspects of society, but Astra kind of screwed a pooch on that situation, and her newfound buddy ends up visiting her and being like, what did you do? You're screwing, but Astra's like, no, I can fix this. Like, what if I can make it so that everyone is able to keep their jobs? And it's like, right, like, Astra's promising to get them everything they need, like breaks and stuff like that, because most of the workforce is gone, but also they do have, like, very intelligent, hardworking women who are here too, who can also do the work. So they keep that operation going. At the same time, like, Nate had let everyone know that he's moving in with he had let them know ahead of time that he's moving in with Zari 1.0, and everyone was like, hey, that's cool, you're moving into the Totem. And I love even going like, so are we going to fix the time machine, or are we all going to move into the Totem? But then I love Gary being like, oh, can I get your steel helmet? I'm like, when's the last time Nate actually wore that? And he's like, yes, Gary, you can have my steel helmet. I'm like, why do you even want that, Gary? I guess it's like, this way I get to always keep a piece of you. But he's like, no, I'm just going to be commuting between the Totem and here. But Zari 2.0 reappears, excited only to have her phone back. And I love that later on she's the only one that's like, yeah, why didn't you tell me Gwen looks like a bearded a bearded John, and they're like, really? I don't see it. And Nate's like, yeah, it looks more like Rip to me. It's like, I love that you're saying that, but it's like, Zari does it, well, 2.0 doesn't know Rip, 1.0 does. So that's a I mean, that was like, well, in the grand scheme of things, also Behrad would know because he became the totem bearer, so he's been, like, obviously everything they did with Zari, it was him, but obviously things changed a little bit because the family was still alive, where her 1.0's timeline, they weren't, so. They never really went into, I mean, I guess it's like, why get so in the weeds about, like, how different Season 3 would be, because that was a big motivator for Zari, was, like, right, her family being gone, and that also played a role in why she wanted to change a lot of histories, because she wanted to change her own history to prevent it being from what it was, so. I've never really brought that up before now, but they don't talk about it because it's like, right, you'd have to, like, you know, it's set in stone, but it's just like, you can always imagine, like, yeah, Behrad would handle a lot of stuff in the past differently from Zari, just because he has a completely different personality from Zari, especially because of this particular timeline. This Behrad is different from her Behrad, you know, from 1.0's Behrad. But nevertheless, tangents and all that aside, they're, because it turns out not everyone's copacetic. Most of the ancestors are happy to have Nate in there, except for one of their uncles who's like 400 years old, and it's like, no, he's not someone that you can, like, schmooze. So you have Zari, but mainly Behrad teaching Nate, like, was it Terof, which is apparently like a kind of a Persian, Iranian like culture of thing of, like, it's kind of that hospitality type of thing. Mikasa as Sukasa type of philosophy, you know, and teaching them the different principles. And it's such an interesting thing because I think you could find, like, a lot of parallels between this culture and, like, a lot of other cultures. Like, I know in, like, a lot of Asian cultures, it is all about, I mean, every culture is about it. Like, I think we do kind of lose that sometimes, probably here in certain aspects of America. You know, if your culture's from other places, like, you probably still keep that alive. But it's like the whole thing. I mean, the fundamentals are probably, like, lost a little bit, like, modern day in certain, like, I think in just a general American culture of just, like, yeah, you have to show respect. Like Behrad was saying, like, if someone offers you something, you have to basically turn it down 3 times, and then Nate's like, so you have to lie? And then you have Zari being like, yeah, exactly. She's like, it's kind of like a you have to basically pretend you're putting on a performance, except you're both the star and the audience in it. But yeah, because, like, you know, in Asian culture, it's all about serving the eldest member of the family first, because that's how you show respect. So I think it's a similar principle in certain regards. It's like, yeah, you want to seem, as a host, you want to seem like, oh, you're not expected, like you're not expecting to be served and stuff like that. So you have to kind of turn it down, like, no, thank you, and then on the third time, graciously accept it. Because that's supposed to show, like, okay, you don't want to seem too needy, but you also don't want to seem very dismissive. It's like this perfect little balance. It's like, it is an interesting balancing act, and just, you know, it's like, oh, the clashing of the cultures, and I thought that was such an interesting thing. Also, like, there's no booze drinking inside of the totem, too, so, like, that's got to be something Nate has to give up, too. But also, they're using Bishop as an example, as, like, Behrad is, you know, being a very, like, is very accommodating towards him, even though he's very, like, he's pushing the boundaries of it, being very, like, taking advantage of Behrad's kindness over and over again, because that's who Behrad is in general. He's like, I'm more of a lover, not a fighter, so, like, I never, like, you know, it's just the way he is. He wants everyone to feel welcome. And I love that moment between him and Astra, because Astra's, like, feeling worried about what she's done, but then Behrad is, like, she's, like, put his head on her shoulder, and she's like, what are you doing? He's like, seeing things from your perspective. And he's like, you are a fighter. You're someone that's not afraid to speak your mind and fight a fight that you got to fight. And for him, it's like, he's not built like that. He's like, I could do with a little more Astra, you know? Like, you know, in his own personal life, so... but she kind of taught him to kind of stand up to Bishop, you know, a little bit. And I'm like, they had that moment, and it's just like, oh, like, and they're there for a second. It's like, oh, we got to get back to work. It's like, oh, yeah, it's about to be the dinner time rush. I'm like, yeah, I like, because they introduced this last season like a potential Behrad and Astra thing, and I think we're slowly getting there. I'm like, I'm loving all the couplings. That's so sweet. because Behrad does eventually stand up to Bishop, and Bishop apologizes. He's like, right, I haven't, but he's been working on something. He's basically worked on it, and he uses Zari's phone in a crux of it. But basically, it's a device that will help Gideon communicate with the time machine, and it will actually go where she wants it to. It will act as kind of like, because with her brain, she'll be able to actually point the time machine and where it needs to go. And it's like, oh, wow, you've been working. He's like, yes, like, he didn't want to tell them what he was up to until, like, it was done. But it's like, right, we're friends. And then Behrad shakes his hand because it's like, yeah, Bishop, he has the potentiality to be, he has a legend potentiality, you know? I know it's just potential, but the potentiality of having potential of potentially becoming a legend. And I even love it because it's even tuned to, like, Gideon's style. So when she puts it on, it's like, oh, that shirt brings out the blue in, like, Gary's eyes, and those pants accentuate his butt. And she's like, okay, now I see why humans want to keep secrets sometimes. And Behrad is like, there's no shame. Those pants do accustomate his butt. And it's just like, and it's just like, Gary and Gideon, I love it. This is so cute and new. I love it. It's so adorable. But yeah, I'm wondering, is it because because of our conversation with Behrad, I wonder, is that why Mr. Staples was able to move again? Because, like, she wasn't as nervous anymore. He actually got her relaxed, and she was able to go out there and kind of inspire everyone, because they're worried, like, right, if we screw this up, Mr. Staples is going out of his way for us, and it's kind of like, if we screw this up, like, but like, Astra, like, motivates him, but like, no, we've got this, like, look what we've been able to accomplish. We can't just let someone stop us, and like, no, we're doing good, and let's keep it up, ladies. We're almost there. We're almost at the home stretch. So I wonder in that moment, because she wasn't feeling all that anxiety and anger that she was before Mr. Staples, because I think Behrad maybe it was just, the timing just finally happened. I wonder, was it just her powers, like, calming down because Behrad helped her calm down? I'm curious, maybe the combination of the two. Maybe it just happens to work like that just for storytelling purposes, the parallels, but also maybe there is the actual magical reason why that happened. But when it's all said and done, though, Mr. Staple comes out and he's pissed at everybody. He's wanting them to get them fired. But Eleanor Roosevelt shows up, and she likes a lot of what she's seen, and is like, integration and stuff like that. So she's actually proud of, like, the work they've done, and wants a big picture, and it's like, this is going to be the cover of Time, so everyone is in the picture together. So it all worked out. And I even love, it's like, because there was a metaphor I thought was so beautiful, because I skipped over it, but there was a conversation Astra had where it was like, the metaphor of, just because you stab someone 9 inches in the back and then you pull out the 6 doesn't make it progress. I was like, that, that's a metaphor she would, coming from her circumstances in hell and everything like that. Of course, she would have that, like, perspective on things, but that would be the metaphor she would use. Because the whole conversation is about, like, right, you youngsters want to, like, rush everything, but progress isn't going to happen overnight. We were given this opportunity, and we're all branches, and eventually, like, this is about maybe not just our generation, but the next generation, what the future holds. Like, this is the stepping stone, and progress isn't isn't just all at once. It isn't just overnight. It may take a long time, but every step along the way, slow and steady. But at the end, she was telling Astra, she unties, like, the bandana from her head, and just like, you do things your way because it's beautiful, and I'm like, yeah, like, kind of like, don't ever, like, young people never stop doing things your way, that throwing caution to the wind, because sometimes you have to make those big swings, you have to take those risks sometimes. So I thought that was kind of a beautiful element and turnaround for this story. So everything worked out, but it's like, oh man, it's all good, except now they've let evil Gideon know where they are, because now integration happened 2 years earlier than it was supposed to, and it's like, crap, we got to get out of here. And Bishop and Gideon end up using the machine to not, and because it is space and time, and so they just traveled space until, like, the factory floor to get close to everyone. And obviously, like, Gideon send out a full-blown, like, SWAT team of sorts, like, unloading bullets. Nate was going to, like, rush off and like, it's like, right, I can steal up and like block the way. And it's like Ava was suggesting Sarah goes over, but Sarah's like, I'm not leaving you behind again. But Bishop went full blown Rambo, start shooting everybody down, so everyone was able to get to the time machine. They're like, all right, Bishop, come on, and then he gets captured. I was like, oh, I was like, I figured he was gonna say, but he didn't have to say a word. He just looked at Sarah, he gave her a slow goodbye, Captain, and then she kind of gives him the salute back, and he gets killed. I'm like, no, I was hoping Bishop, he was. Oh, that sucks. It's like, yeah, he was Legends material. So it's like, where do we go? It's like home. So damn, that sucked. I mean, granted, Bishop isn't the Bishop. That sucks because, but robot Bishop is already fulfilling his role and everything. And I think for him, this made up for like the mistakes he's made. And I was like, oh man, I was hoping you were going to be kicking it with the Legends. It's like, that's a bummer, dude. But it turns out these evil robots are the Legends. So it's like, wow, it's not just evil Gideon they have to face off against. It's the evil Legends. So they're going to have to go up against their evil doppelganger. So that's definitely going to be interesting. It's like, right, you want to stop the Legends? Then send the Legends. Because the Legends, who would know how to beat the Legends better than them? Because they are so, like, unpredictable and wacky in what they do. Like, they aren't, it's like, right, you got to send copies of them. I'm curious, I guess once Gideon's killed them, she'll probably replace them with these robots so that the Legends, well, I wonder if she's going to go back in time and try and fix every mistake that the Legends, but it's also like she can't change things from what they are because it'll have catastrophic effects on the timeline as a whole. But going forward, she's probably going to use these Legends, not like she's going to replace our Legends with these robot Legends, and then when that happens, going forward, any anachronisms across time she'll fix, but she won't it'll be like, no, we're going in, we're going to be robotic and efficient, and that way we get rid of the anachronism, but we also don't change time too much, whether it's for the better in certain regards. Like in this instance where like, yeah, they integration got moved up 2 years, so that type of situation. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all of this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.